My name is Harper Lane. I'm 31. I have faced real enemies, the kind that hide bombs under sand and disappear behind smoke. But nothing ever hit me like the moment I read 5 words from my father on Christmas Eve. "We don't miss you here." That text lit up my phone like a warning flare. I was sitting cross-legged on my bed, a half-wrapped box of presents beside me. Outside my apartment window, string lights blinked down the snowy street. Inside, it felt like someone had cut the power. I served 3 tours overseas in logistics and field operations. And this is the story of how I found out what family really meant. The night mine decided to erase me. 3 years. 3 Christmases spent with sand in my boots instead of snow under them. 3 birthdays, a funeral, a wedding, all missed. All sent through group photos I barely belonged in anymore. But I kept telling myself, they'll be there when I come home. That's what family does. Turns out, not always. I'd been planning this homecoming since the day I was discharged. I rented a 1-bedroom in Cedar Falls, my hometown. Quiet, affordable, forgettable. Perfect for rebuilding. My duffel still sat half packed in the corner. A carved wooden music box I'd found in Prague for my mom, handcrafted fishing gear for my dad, Tiny. Born to be wild. Onesies for a niece and nephew I'd never met. And tucked inside a side pocket was a worn envelope with pipe tobacco scents still clinging to it. My grandfather's last letter. Grandpa Samuel was the only one who kept writing while I was gone. Actual letters. Paper and pen. Like time still moved slower for him. For when the world feels too big again. He'd write on the front of the envelope. He never gave advice unless you asked. He didn't try to fix you. He just saw you. On our last call, a video chat with flickering Wi-Fi and his gruff voice distorted by age, he'd said, "You need to come home, kiddo. Not just for them, for you. I want them to see who you've become, and I want you to remember who you were before all this." But 5 days before Christmas, my father sent me that message. "We don't miss you here." No apology, just exile. I didn't call. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I canceled my flight. I unpacked the gifts. And I spent Christmas Eve in my apartment alone, eating lo mein from a takeout container, and listening to someone else's family laugh through the paper. Thin walls. 2 days later, my phone buzzed nonstop before sunrise. 9 missed calls. The first voicemail was from my mother, her voice choked. "Harper, please call us. I just found out what your father texted. We didn't mean it like that. Something's happened." The next came from my older sister, Melissa. Always diplomatic, always cold. "You not showing up made everything worse. We were counting on you. It's not just about you, you know." The third was from my brother, Shane, breathless and panicked. "Harper, it's Grandpa. He passed Christmas Eve. The will. You were supposed to be there." My hand stopped moving. The room didn't tilt. It collapsed. The only person who truly stayed in touch during the worst years of my life. The only one who still called me, "Kiddo," and signed letters, "Always rooting for you." Gone. And no one told me. Not on Christmas. Not after. They were going to let me find out by silence. The final voicemail came from a local number I didn't recognize. "Miss Lane. This is Evelyn Marsh, estate attorney for the late Samuel Lane. Please contact our office immediately regarding the execution of his final will and testament. Time sensitive. Thank you." And just like that, I understood. This wasn't about Christmas. It wasn't about absence or family tension. It was about keeping me away. 2 years earlier, during a short break between deployments, Grandpa and I had walked his land together. 40 acres of Carolina pine, with a broken windmill at the edge of a pond where I first learned to fish. He'd stopped under the old pecan tree near the house. "If something happens to me," he'd said, "serious for once, don't let them box you out. I've made arrangements. Just make sure you show up." At the time, I'd laughed, told him he was being dramatic. But now, I wasn't laughing. I was done being left out. I called the attorney's office that same morning. She confirmed what I already suspected. I was the primary beneficiary. The land, the farmhouse, the investments. Even shares in the craft distillery Grandpa had founded 30 years ago. All of it. But there was one condition. I had to attend the formal will reading in person. If I didn't show up on January 3rd, the estate would automatically pass to the next legal heir, my father. My voice cracked as I asked, "Did Grandpa know how they treated me?" The attorney hesitated. Yes, that's why he made the changes, and why he requested the will be recorded and read in full, with witnesses. He didn't want anyone pressuring you, or pretending they cared after the fact. And just like that, everything snapped into sharp military clarity. My father's text wasn't about Christmas. It was preemptive sabotage. They didn't want me to show up, because they knew I'd been left everything. The sudden flurry of calls wasn't love. It was panic, because the person they'd spent years pretending didn't matter was suddenly the only person who did. So I packed my bag. I booked a flight. And this time, I wasn't coming home as the forgotten soldier. I was coming back as the storm they never saw coming. I didn't stay with them. I didn't call ahead. I didn't even drive past the house I used to call home. I arrived in Hollow Creek, North Carolina, the night before the will reading, and checked into a motel just off Route 78. The 79 a night, clean enough, quiet enough, perfect. I didn't come to make peace. I came to honor the only man who ever treated me like I belonged. On the morning of January 3rd, I woke up before sunrise. I braided my hair back, pressed my navy blazer, pulled on the same boots that carried me through 3 deployments. They were still stained with red desert dust, no matter how many times I cleaned them. Good. Let them see exactly who they tried to erase. 9:59 a.m. I pushed open the glass door of Marsh and Kenner Law, an old brick building downtown with polished wood floors and too many diplomas on the wall. The receptionist looked up. "Miss Lane." I nodded. She gestured to a closed door. "They're already inside." Of course they were. They'd probably been rehearsing grief for an hour. The conference room was walnut-paneled, formal, and cold. My entire family turned in unison when I stepped through the doorway. My father, stiff in a rumpled gray suit, red-eyed, jaw clenched. My mother, silent, pale, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. Melissa, perfect as ever, in her beige turtleneck and gold hoops, her expression flickering from smug to startled. Shane, hands folded in his lap, eyes refusing to meet mine. I said nothing, just walked calmly to the end of the table and sat down. Melissa spoke first. "You actually came." I placed a folder on the table and replied evenly. Didn't want to disappoint Grandpa. At exactly 10:00 a.m., the door opened and attorney Evelyn Marsh entered. Impeccable suit, tight gray bun, no small talk. She sat, pulled out a recorder, pressed PLI, and then his voice. "Grandpa Samuel, rough, steady, clear. If you're hearing this, I'm probably dead. And if Harper's in the room, thank you, kiddo. I knew you'd come." No one spoke. Let me start by saying this. Harper was the only one who wrote to me every month without fail. She asked about my blood pressure in the garden. She didn't come for money. She came with love. So I'm leaving her everything. The house, the land, the distillery shares, the investment accounts, the rights, the titles. All of it. I heard a sharp inhale from my sister. My mother bowed her head. My father's jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd hear his teeth crack. Then Grandpa added, with a smirk in his voice, "And if anyone contests this will, they get nothing. Not even the tools in the garage. So think real hard before you do something stupid." Melissa exploded first. "This is absurd. You barely even talked to him last year." I turned to her calmly. I called. "You didn't. You had time for baby showers and vacations, but not for the man who raised your father." Dad spat the words like venom. "You think wearing a uniform makes you superior." I leaned forward, voice steady. "No. I think texting your daughter, 'We don't miss you here,' 5 days before your own father dies, says everything anyone needs to know." Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "We didn't know. He didn't tell us." I looked at her. Not angry, just tired. "You didn't ask. That's the problem. You never ask." Shane finally found his voice. We were going to tell you. After Christmas, once things settled, I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. After you claimed everything, the room went silent. Attorney Marsh slid the final paperwork toward me. Unless there are legal objections, Miss Lane, your signature, please. I signed, slow, clean, final. Then I stood. Took one last look at the people who shared my blood but not my heart. You didn't want me home. Now you don't have one. I walked out before anyone could speak. Outside, the January wind was sharp and clean. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. There's a strange kind of silence after you win a war you didn't want to fight. Not celebration. Not relief. Just stillness. The kind that lets you hear every creak in the floorboards of a house you used to tiptoe through. I didn't return to the family house right away. Not out of fear. Just priorities. In the days that followed the will reading, I met with financial advisors, property lawyers, and accountants. I learned more about Sam Lane's legacy in 72 hours than my family had probably bothered to ask in 30 years. He wasn't just a man with a pond and a pipe and an old truck. He was a strategist. He had layered the estate with protective clauses, tax shields, and clear ownership chains. Even the distillery shares, a quiet 17% holding, were worth more than I'd imagined. Enough to pay for a master's degree 3 times over. Enough to fund something bigger. The farmhouse, my house now, was still occupied by my parents. They had 30 days to vacate. The attorney had filed the paperwork immediately after the will was validated. I didn't show up in person. I didn't want a confrontation. I had the property manager deliver the notice by hand. My father called once. I didn't answer. No voicemail. Just silence, the same kind he had given me for years. My sister Melissa sent an email. This is vindictive, Harper. You're being cruel. We're your family. I forwarded it to Attorney Marsh. Blocked her address. Shane, to his credit, tried harder. He left voicemails. The kind you could tell were rehearsed, but also real, was wrong. About everything. I should have said something when Dad sent that text. I should have told you about Grandpa the minute it happened. He didn't ask for the house back. He just asked for a second chance. I didn't respond, because I wasn't sure I had anything left to give. On the 29th day, the property manager called to confirm the house had been vacated. The keys were on the kitchen counter. There was an envelope next to them, addressed to me. Inside was my old photo album, the one with the blue vinyl cover and faded gold lettering, and a single handwritten note. We failed you, Mom. I didn't cry. Not then. But I sat in the empty kitchen, sunlight pooling on the floor, dust in the corners, and flipped through the album slowly. A picture of me in pigtails, holding a frog, a 4th grade science fair ribbon, a blurry shot of Grandpa and me in a canoe. Every smile in those photos felt like it belonged to someone else's life. But the girl in those pictures, she deserved to be remembered. Over the next week, I cleared out what they left behind. I donated most of the furniture to a veterans housing group. I kept the heirlooms, the good dishes, a quilt my grandma made before she passed. I moved into the upstairs room with the slanted ceiling, the one Grandpa had always said was the quietest place in the world. And one afternoon, as I unpacked my uniform from its garment bag, I realized I didn't just inherit a house. I inherited a chance to start over. I didn't know what came next, but I knew this: I would never again beg someone to let me belong, and I would never again mistake silence for peace. The thing about survival is, it never really ends. You survive war. Then you survive coming home. Then you survive silence. And if you're lucky, you get tired of surviving and start building. I wasn't sure when the idea hit me. Maybe it was the night I stood barefoot in Grandpa's old barn, staring at the faded American flag he'd nailed above the rafters. Or maybe it was the voicemail I got from a woman I hadn't seen in 6 years, a sergeant who served with me in Kandahar. Her voice was strained, low. You ever feel like the world moved on without you, Harper? I can't sleep. I can't breathe in rooms with clocks. Sometimes I just want to go where no one expects me to be fine. I didn't know what to say, but I knew exactly what she meant. The farmhouse was big, too big for one person. The land was quiet, too quiet for someone used to the chaos of command. So I made a decision. I called my lawyer, then a nonprofit, then another. I filled out forms, filed papers, met with inspectors. By spring, the town knew what was coming: the Lane House for transitioning veterans. A place for female soldiers, airmen, and Marines coming back to the world and trying to figure out where they fit in it. Not a shelter, not a rehab, a reset. Somewhere to breathe, somewhere to rebuild, somewhere to be seen. Melissa sent another email when she heard. I didn't open it. Shane texted. Grandpa would have loved that. I didn't answer. But I didn't block him either. That felt like something. The first woman to stay at the house was named Nina, 35, former logistics officer, divorced, estranged from her family. Night terrors so bad she hadn't slept a full night in a year. She showed up with one backpack and eyes that didn't blink enough. I gave her the upstairs guest room, the one with the wide windows and the old rocking chair. She stared at me in disbelief. "You're not charging rent?" "Nope," I said. "Why?" "Because someone did the same for me, and I didn't even realize it until he was gone." The next resident was Tasha, 28, ex-Air Force, dislocated from her life after a medical discharge. Then came Maria and Des and Claire. They came one by one. But each one brought something back into the house: laughter, stories, a new coat of paint on a window frame, a cup of coffee left outside a bedroom door. By fall, the Lane house had a wait list, not because it was fancy, but because it was real. Because every woman who stayed knew that she didn't have to explain why she flinched when someone shut a door too hard, or why she sometimes cried during commercials, or why she still kept a knife under her pillow. Here, no one asked you to smile unless you meant it. One night, we sat around the fire pit in the backyard, bundled in old blankets, passing around hot cider and stories. Nina turned to me and said, "Do you ever think your family regrets how they treated you?" I shrugged. Maybe. But that's their burden, not mine. A week later, I found an envelope in the mailbox. No return address. Inside was a card, a baby picture, and a note from Shane. Her name's Grace. "Thought you'd want to know. I'd like her to meet her aunt someday. When you're ready." I stared at the picture. A round face, tiny fist, eyes closed, a new generation, a clean page. I placed the photo on the fireplace next to Grandpa's letter, the last one he sent before he passed. He'd signed it the same way he always did, rooting for you. Always. Grandpa's. And in that moment, surrounded by women who weren't my blood but had become my family, I realized I wasn't just healing. I was rebuilding something worth keeping. 3 years later, I still haven't spoken to my father. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on Veterans Day. Not even when news outlets started writing features about the Lane House for veterans. He never reached out. And honestly, I stopped expecting him to. Shane still sends postcards. One every few months. No guilt, just still thinking of you. Grace took her first steps. "Do you still make that awful black coffee?" I never write back, but I keep them, pinned to the fridge, like anchors. Not because they change the past, but because they remind me that some people are trying. Melissa emailed last Christmas. A long, rambling apology that started with, "I didn't know," and ended with, "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. But I read it twice. And then there's Mom. She never called, never visited. But she left one last thing in that house before she walked away. "We failed you." Those 3 words used to sting. Now they feel like release. Because acknowledgement, even late, is more honest than denial. Last week, I stood at the edge of the pond behind the farmhouse, the one Grandpa used to fish at. The trees were bare, the water still. A new veteran had just arrived that morning. A woman named Bruh, soft-spoken and shock. She asked if she could stay, just a few nights. I told her, "You can stay as long as you need." She nodded, eyes wide. "You run this place alone?" "No," I smiled. Not anymore. Inside the house, Nina was repainting the pantry. Maria was baking. Tasha was reading in the sunroom, one leg tucked under her. This wasn't just my home anymore. It was ours, built not from inheritance, but from intention, from survival, from the sacred act of staying when it's hard. Sometimes, people ask me if I ever forgave my father, if I'd ever let him come back. And the truth is, forgiveness is not a key I owe to someone who changed the locks on me first. I don't hate him, but I don't carry him anymore. Because family is not who you're born to. It's who shows up and keeps showing up. And as I stand on this porch, coffee in hand, sunrise cutting through the pine trees, laughter bubbling from the kitchen, I know exactly who I am, not their afterthought. Not their soldier, not their shame. I'm Harper Lane, veteran, builder, protector. And this time, I'm not surviving, I'm home. If you've ever felt pushed aside by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever spent a holiday pretending you weren't waiting for someone to call, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You don't owe anyone your peace just because you share a name. You get to choose who gets a seat at your table. You get to redefine what love looks like. You get to rebuild, and this time, with walls that protect you, not isolate you. This story isn't just Harper's, it's mine. It might be yours, and that's why we tell them, right here. This is Telling Story with me, and we'll be right here when you're ready to rise again.